The wind moved slowly across the desert moon as little Zira sat on the edge of the orphan camp, her legs crossed, her eyes looking at the endless stars above. The sky was so big, so empty, yet it made her feel warm in her chest. She did not know why. She felt that way. Maybe it was the stars. Maybe it was the old stories the caretaker used to tell the other kids never listened. But Zira did, always quietly, always with wide eyes. She was not like the others. She had soft purple skin, long silver hair, and strange eyes, one green, one gold. The other kids called her half-blood. They threw sand at her, laughed behind her back. But she never cried, not once, not in front of them. She would just walk away, find her quiet spot by the fence, and dream of a world that felt real only in her heart. That night the stars were brighter than usual. Something in the sky pulsed like a heartbeat. A low hum drifted in the air. No one else noticed. They were all inside the rusty sleeping pods. But Zira heard it clearly. Like a soft voice whispering her name, she stood up, the sand cold under her feet. Her little hand touched the fence, her head tilted like she was listening again. There it was again, voice, not words. Just a feeling, a calling, a pull from the darkness. Beyond the camp, her heart beat faster. Her fingers closed around the loose wires of the fence she had found that week. Spot long ago, a hole near the back. She had never used it. But tonight her feet moved without her thinking. Her body knew before her mind did. She slipped through the gap and into the unknown. Desert was quiet, the sand glowing faintly under her steps. Her eyes scanned the shadows, but there was nothing, just the sound of her breath and the distant hum of machines. Then she saw it, a shape, a tall figure standing still at the edge of the dunes. It did not move, it just stood there like a statue, but Zira felt it staring at her, not in fear, not in anger, but in surprise. Like it had seen a ghost. She took one step, then another. Her breath short, her heart loud in her chest. Then the figure moved slowly, carefully, like it did not want to scare her. It stepped into the soft light, and she saw him, a human. A real one, tall, broad, with short brown hair and eyes full of something she had never seen before. Sorrow, hope, pain. He looked at her for a long moment. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but could not. Then he took one step closer and knelt down to her level. His voice came out low, soft, shaky. "It's you." Zira blinked, confused. Her small hands curled at her sides. The man looked at her like he knew her, like he had waited years just to see her face again. He pulled something from his pocket, a photo, old and faded. He held it out with shaking fingers. She looked at it. It was a picture of a small alien baby wrapped in soft cloths, her skin pale purple, her hair silver just like hers. One green, one gold. She felt something heavy in her chest, her legs weak, her lips moved. "Who are you?" The man looked like he might cry, but he smiled, a broken smile, and said something she could not forget. "Him, the one who lost you and never stopped searching." Zira stepped back, confused, afraid. A storm of feelings swirled inside her. She turned and ran back toward the camp, her small feet kicking up glowing sand behind her. She slipped through the fence hole and fell to her knees, breathing hard, her mind spinning. The sky above her, still full of stars. She looked down at her hands, then at the camp, then at the desert. Beyond the fence, who was that man? Why did he know her face? And why did her heart feel like it was trying to remember something long forgotten? Stars offered no answer, only silence. But deep inside Zira, something had changed, something had awakened. Nothing would be the same again. Morning came with orange light falling over the dusty roofs of the orphan camp. The air was dry, the sky was quiet, but inside Zira's mind everything was spinning. Her eyes stared ahead blank, her fingers gripped the small blanket around her shoulders. She had not slept. The memory of the man in the desert would not leave her. He had known her face, he had spoken like he knew her name. Even when she had never told it. In the center hall, the caretakers gave out dry food cubes. The other kids laughed, shoved each other, and talked about last night's holas. But Zira stayed quiet. She sat in the corner, not even touching her food. Her eyes kept drifting toward the gate outside. Her heart beat a little faster without reason. Then the gate opened. A tall man walked in with a bag on his shoulder and dust on his boots. Some caretakers stood up quickly, whispering to each other. A few of the kids stared wide-eyed. A human was rare on this moon, and one like him, even Rara Zira's body froze as she saw his face. It was him, the man from the desert. His clothes were different, now cleaner, but his eyes were the same, sad, warm, knowing he greeted the caretakers. Politely said he had come to volunteer for the orphans. Said he had skills fixing old machines and running small lessons for survival training. He used to be in the force, he said. Caretakers accepted him happily. They always needed help, especially free help. He was assigned to teach the older kids how to clean old tech, how to repair hover panels, and basic language classes. Zira watched from behind the columns, her eyes never blinking. He moved with calm steps, but every time he looked in her direction, something strange happened in his face. His smile got smaller, his breath deeper, like he was holding something inside. Days passed and he stayed always kind, never forceful. He never approached Zira directly, but always gave a small smile. When their eyes met sometimes, he left small gifts. Near her pot, a clean water flask, a better pillow once, even a book with a star symbol she had never seen before. She wanted to say thank you, but something inside her kept her quiet. One evening after class, he sat outside fixing an old communicator. Zira walked past him slowly, her hand holding the book he had left her. She stopped nearby, pretending to look at the stars again. He looked up and said in a soft voice, "That book was my daughter's favorite." Zira said nothing, just nodded once, then walked away. That night, she could not sleep again. Her mind was full of questions, so many pieces that did not fit together. But something inside her pushed her forward quietly. She crept to his room at the edge of the camp. The door was slightly open. He was not inside, but his bag was on the table. She stepped in slowly, her fingers shaking. She opened the bag carefully. Inside were papers, photos, a small scanner, and a folded shirt. Her eyes landed on a photo she had seen before. It showed a baby with her eyes, her hair, her skin tone, and behind the baby stood the same man, younger and smiling. Beside him was an alien woman with silver hair, her arms around the baby, her eyes full of love. Zira's breath caught in her throat. She reached for the small scanner and looked at it. There was a file open, a DNA log. It said subject match 98.9%. She stumbled back just as the door opened. The man stood there, his eyes wide, not in anger, but in pain. He looked at her, holding the photo in one hand, the scanner in the other. His voice broke slightly when he spoke. "I did not mean to scare you. I just needed to know for sure." Zira looked up. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Why?" He sat down on the floor across from her, slowly, like he wanted to be near but not too close. He said years ago he loved someone from her world. She was a healer. They had met during the conflict. She had left suddenly, without warning. He searched, but never found her. Then heard rumors of a baby taken to this moon. He'd been searching ever since. And when he saw Zira, her eyes, her face, he knew. Zira asked what happened to the woman. He said he never found out, only pain and silence. He had lost both of them that day until now. She sat there listening, the photo in her hand, her chest heavy, her heart loud. She asked, "Is it true? Am I yours?" He looked at her and said, "I believe you are, but I will never force you to believe it." Zira stood up slowly and walked to the door, but before leaving she turned back, her voice small but steady. "I want to know more." Stars above blinked quietly as the door closed behind her. Her world had changed again, but this time she was not alone in the storm. The morning was silent, the sun not yet high, and the wind carried dust across the dry floor of the camp. Zira walked through the narrow path between metal walls, her fingers gripping the photo tighter than before. Her eyes looked forward, but her thoughts swam backward again and again. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the woman's face, the smile, the soft hands holding a baby, the same baby who now stood lost and unsure in her own skin. She could not stop thinking about what the man had said. His voice echoed inside her chest like an old melody. Part of her wanted to believe him, to call him father, to say it out loud, but another part still feared. It still questioned. It's so many lies in her life, so many broken promises. One more truth could either heal her or break her forever. She slipped inside the old repair shed where the human kept his tools, machines, and old tech. The scanner he used was there on the table, still blinking quietly. Her hands shook as she reached for it. Her Mine screamed, "What if?" But her heart whispered, "What if not?" Her fingers tapped the screen. Her name came up. She placed her hair in the sample tray, waited, watched the blinking light, watched her breath slow, then stop as the result appeared. Match found. 98.9% match with Dallin Crewman, level 3 human Earth origin, father, unknown status confirmed. Her eyes filled with tears, not the painful kind, but the kind that felt like something inside her had been broken for too long. And now it was finding a way to heal. She stepped back, holding the scanner like it was made of fire. She stared at the screen for many moments, not moving, not breathing, not blinking. Dallin entered the shed slowly, his boots soft against the metal floor. His eyes went to the scanner, then to Zira, his face full of worry, but he said nothing. Instead, he waited for her to speak, waited for her to choose silence or truth. She held out the scanner to him, her voice barely louder than the wind. I checked. He took it gently, his hands careful not to scare her. He read the result, his lips pressed together tightly. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Zira asked softly, "Why did you not tell me everything before?" Dallin sat down on a metal crate, his elbows resting on his knees, his voice calm but heavy. "I was afraid. I was wrong, afraid you would hate me, afraid I would lose you before I ever truly found you. I wanted to wait until you felt ready." She walked closer slowly, like her feet were unsure of the ground. She said, "You still might be wrong." He nodded. "You have the right to doubt, and I will not force your heart, but everything in me says you are my child. I knew it when I saw your eyes. I felt it when you said nothing, and still reminded me of someone I loved more than life." She looked away, her thoughts spinning, then said, "If I am your daughter, what do we do now?" Dallin smiled softly, a sad smile, and said, "Now we find out what that means together." Later that day, the sky turned darker than usual. Ships flew over the camp, unfamiliar ones, black and silent with red lights that blinked in patterns. The caretakers gathered the children inside quickly, but Zira was already gone, walking with Dallin toward the hills outside the camp. She had questions still, and he had stories to share about a world she never knew, a woman he never stopped loving, and a future they might still have. But before he could speak, a loud voice boomed from above. A drone hovered low, scanning them both with cold red light. The voice ordered them to halt, identify, and wait for enforcement. Zira reached for Dallin's hand. He pulled her close, his face calm, but his heart alert. The drone scanned again, its light flashing quickly. Zira's pendant, the one Dallin had given her long ago, began to glow bright silver, then golden, then white. The drone beeped once, then turned and flew away into the key cloud. Shira looked at the glowing pendant, confused. "What is this?" Dallin looked at it, then at her, his eyes wide with shock. "I do not know. It should not do that, unless it was responding to your DNA." She held it tighter, the light dimming now, but something inside her burning stronger than ever. She was not just an orphan, not just a lost girl. She was something more, connected to something older, something bigger. She did not have all the answers, but now she had someone willing to find them with her, and that was more than she had ever dreamed. The wind carried a strange tension across the orphan camp as black drones circled the sky, and a low hum spread through the air like a warning. The caretakers called the children to gather, but Zira was not among them. She stood beside Dallin near the camp's water tank, her pendant cold now, resting quietly against her chest, her mind still turning from what had happened. The glow, the drone's reaction, the words. Dallin whispered into the silence, "It responds to your DNA." Before she could ask more, a ship appeared above them, a sleek alien vessel marked with the golden seal of the sector enforcers. It lowered like a shadow, falling over the camp. Doors opened, and soldiers stepped out, their armor sharp, their faces hidden behind glass masks. The leader walked forward, reading from a hala screen, his voice robotic and flat. "By order of the United Interworld Code, the subject named Zira is to be taken for immediate examination under suspicion of genetic violation." Dallin moved in front of her, his arms wide, his voice strong. "She is under my protection. I will not let you take her without proof of threat." The officer tilted his head, then spoke again. "You are a human outsider with no claim. This child is registered orphan property under Code 7. Your protest is denied." Zira's heart raced as two soldiers grabbed her arms, pulling her away. Her voice called out for Dallin, her eyes wide with fear, but he was held down by force. Electric bands wrapped around his wrists and legs, locking him to the sand. She kicked and screamed, but the soldiers ignored her. They dragged her into the ship and sealed the doors. Inside, the walls were white and cold. The air smelled like chemicals. Machines beeped around her as scanners passed over her body, without touch, without words. Metal arms clipped her clothes and replaced them with a silver test robe. Her pendant was placed in a sealed glass box, where it blinked softly. Alone, she was led into a chamber where strange alien figures stood in white suits, their faces long, their fingers thin and glowing. One of them spoke to her in a quiet voice. "You are a result of forbidden science. We must see what you truly are." Azira tried to speak, but the chair beneath her locked her legs and arms, her body stiff, her heart pounding. They brought out a needle, long and silver, the room spinning around her. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the sound of Dallin's voice, his hand in hers, the photo in her pocket, hidden under her new robe, her breath short, her fear rising like fire. One of the figures leaned closer, his voice calm but cold. "Your DNA shows human mixture. This is not allowed under current law. You are evidence of illegal breeding. Your future must be reviewed." Azira's eyes opened. She looked straight at the figure, her voice trembling but clear. "I am not a mistake. I am a person." The figure paused, then turned away. Another voice entered the room from a speaker. "The child's pendant shows signs of advanced tech, unknown origin, possible ancient code." The room shifted. The air grew tighter, the lights blinked faster. One figure stepped forward with something in its hand, her pendant now glowing brighter than ever, the glass around it cracking with heat. The pendant pulsed once, twice, then exploded with light, blinding the room for one sharp second. When the light faded, a sound echoed through the walls, a voice deep and full of emotion. It was Dallin's voice, coming from the hall beyond the chamber. "Let her go now, or face what comes next." The door burst open, and Dallin stood there, his armor burned, his face bruised, but his eyes filled with fire. Behind him, sparks flew as damaged security bots fell to the floor. He had broken through the systems. He had come for her. Azira's chair unlocked. She stood and ran into his arms. The figures backed away as the pendant floated between them, its light wrapping around both of them in waves of gold. Dallin looked at the aliens, his voice hard and clear. "She is not your lab subject. She is my daughter, and I will take her home." The figures did not move. They only watched as the golden light from the pendant rose into the air, forming shape symbols old and strange. The room's ceiling opened, and for a moment, all the stars in the sky above seemed to shine brighter. Azira and Dallin stood together, his hand on her shoulder, her head against his side, and for the first time, she felt truly safe, not just rescued, but claimed, chosen, protected. Together, they walked out of the chamber, down the halls, past the broken guards, and opened the exit door to the moon's night sky again. But this time she was not looking at the stars. In wonder, she was walking toward them. The dark sky above the alien base was alive with flashing lights and distant sirens. As Azira and Dallin ran across the landing field, her hand tight in his, their feet slipping on the smooth surface with each step behind them, the alarms screamed. Louder voices called for backup. The sound of charging weapons filled the air. But Dallin kept moving, guiding her through smoke and shadow, his breath heavy, his eyes fixed forward. Azira's legs ached, her heart pounded, her body tired from the experiments. But she never let go of his hand. Each time she glanced at him, she saw more than just a man. She saw her father, the one who had broken through walls to reach her, the one who had stared down laws and weapons and fear to protect her, the one who had refused to believe she was lost. They reached the wall of the facility, where a small ship waited, hidden behind old crates. The door opened, the lights blinking fast. Dallin helped her inside, then turned and fired a warning shot at the guards closing. The ground shook from explosions as one of his planted charges went off further down the base, drawing attention away from them. Inside the ship, Azira dropped into the co-pilot seat, her hands trembling as Dallin ran to the control panel. He hit buttons, flipped switches, the engine hummed, and the ship lifted slowly into the air as the guards arrived too late. Their guns aimed, but their target now rising fast into the sky above the camp, above the danger, above the prison that had tried to erase her. The stars welcomed them like old friends. The ship pierced through the clouds and into orbit. Dallin set the autopilot and turned to Zira. His face bruised, his lip bleeding, but his eyes calm again. He knelt beside her and placed the pendant around her neck again, his fingers shaking slightly. "You kept it safe," he said, and she nodded quietly, then whispered, "It kept me safe too." He smiled and pulled her into a gentle hug, and for the first time she let herself believe it. She was no longer an orphan, no longer lost, no longer just another name in a forgotten system. They flew in silence for a long time, the stars watching them as the planet shrank behind them. Dallin told her stories, then about her mother, how they met, how they dreamed of peace, how he lost her during a border conflict, and how every moment since he had wondered if she survived, if their child survived. Zira listened, her eyes wide, her mind painting the pictures. He described a woman with silver hair who laughed like music, a healer who gave without question, who believed that love between species was not just possible but needed. Dallin's voice cracked as he said her name. Zira placed her hand on his and asked quietly, "Was she like me?" He nodded slowly. "More than you know." She was brave, quiet, full of questions. She saw things in people others missed. The ship beeped to alert them of a passing patrol. Dallin moved quickly, adjusted course, and slipped into a hidden lane between satellites he had flown in stealth mode before, and old habits came back fast. He explained to Zira how the systems worked, showing her the screens, the maps, the signals. She watched every move, eager to learn, eager to help. They docked at a safe house hidden inside an asteroid, a place Dallin had used during his old missions. The air inside was dry, but clean. The walls lined with supplies, old uniforms, power cells, books, tools, things left behind from another life. Zira found a room with a bed, a desk, and a small window showing the stars. She sat down slowly, her fingers brushing the old fabric of the blanket. She asked if she could stay here for a while. Dallin said, "As long as you want." He cooked a simple meal from rations and old spice packs. They sat on the floor and ate quietly, sometimes smiling, sometimes just breathing together. He asked her about the camp, the other kids, the dreams she had. She spoke more, now slowly, carefully, but more than before. Before sleep, he handed her a small device. It held recordings from Mira, her voice soft, her stories warm. Zira listened in the dark, tears on her face as her mother spoke about peace, about hope, about the child she would love with all her heart. She whispered to the stars, "I miss you too, even if I never met you. I think I remember you somehow." Dallin stood in the doorway watching his daughter, eyes full of pride and sorrow, mixed like the stars outside, cold and beautiful, but full of light. That night she slept deeply for the first time. No walls, no alarms, no fear, just stars and stories and the sound of her father breathing nearby. She dreamed of green fields, of silver skies, of a home that might still be waiting somewhere far beyond the stars. News of the rescue spread faster than the stars blinked across the void. Colonies heard it, whispers traveled through mining posts, cargo ships, and information hubs. They spoke of a human who broke into an alien facility, of a child with mixed blood, of a glowing pendant that reacted to old tech and ancient language. The story twisted as it moved, but one truth remained: a human had claimed a child and said she was his daughter in a galaxy where that should never be possible. Zira sat at the window of the small asteroid room, her chin resting on her knees. The stars outside did not feel cold anymore. They felt like old friends, listening to her breath, watching her thoughts. Her mind circled the words she had heard from the recordings, the soft voice of her mother telling stories of stars and healing, of love that crossed lines of law and blood. Dallin entered quietly, holding a folded piece of paper, his face tense but calm. He handed it to her and sat down across the room, his fingers locked together, his breath steady but deep. Zira opened the paper slowly, her eyes reading each word with care. "The High Council has summoned us to answer for what we did, for who you are, and for what it means." Shira looked up, her voice quiet. "Will they take me?" Dallin stood, walked to her, and knelt. "You are not a thing to take. You are a person to choose, and I will stand beside you no matter what happens." They left that same night, the ship guided by old paths and secret codes. Dallin had stored in hidden memory. The journey was long, but the silence between them was peaceful. Zira practiced her words each night, thinking of what she would say to those who would judge her, who would question her right to exist. She did not want to beg, she wanted to speak with truth. They reached the council world, a planet of white stone towers and blue waterfalls. Guards escorted them through gates and halls, all eyes on them, some full of pity, others with anger, but a few with wonder. Zira held Dallin's hand tight as they entered the central chamber, a vast dome of crystal and sound light shining through the roof like a river of fire. The council sat in high chairs, their robes heavy, their faces unreadable. A voice echoed through the chamber. State your name and your purpose. Here Dallin stepped forward, his voice calm. I am Dallin, former crewman of Earthfleet. I come with my daughter, Zira. She was taken against her will. She was tested without consent. We have come to speak, not to fight. The council murmured, a sound like waves breaking on rocks. One elder leaned forward, her eyes sharp. The child is not of single blood. She is a result of broken code. This threatens balance. This creates question. Shira stepped forward, her voice small but clear. I did not ask to be born, but I am here, and I will not be silent. Gasps moved through the chamber. Her voice was young but steady. The elder raised a hand, continued. Chill. Jira lifted her head. I lived my life as an orphan. I was told I was unwanted. I was told I was wrong, but none of that broke me. What broke me was not knowing who I was. Now I know, and I will not go back to silence. One of the council asked, what proof do you offer that this man is your father, that this bond is true? Zira stepped forward, held out the pendant. It glowed soft, then bright, then brighter. Symbols of old shimmered in the air, floating between her and Dallin. The chamber fell silent. The symbols pulsed once, then formed a circle around them, golden and warm. A voice from the wall spoke. It was the ancient system code, confirmed bond true match high level genetic tie, human and alien origin accepted. Silence fell heavy, then the elder stood, her voice deep. The child speaks with heart. The proof stands with light. The law must change before truth is lost. The chamber broke into sound again. Some agreed, some did not, but the record had been made. Zira's voice had been heard, and the truth had found its place in the stars outside the chamber. Zira walked beside Dallin, the sky above wide and bright. People watched them, some bowed, some nodded, some whispered, but no one looked away. Dallin knelt and asked, are you all right? She smiled, not a big smile, but a quiet one. I'm not afraid now. That night they stayed in the guest quarters above the falls. Zira sat by the window again, her fingers tracing stars on the glass below her. The council tower glowed in blue and gold. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight she had spoken. She had stood, and the stars had listened. The ship glided slowly through the open space, its engine soft, its path steady as it moved toward a quiet farming moon, far from the busy trade routes, far from the laws and the eyes of the council, far from the place where Zira once felt like she was nothing. Now she stood near the front window, her eyes wide as green fields came into view. Below, hills rolled like waves, wind moved through tall grass, and small homes dotted the land like stars on a map. Dallin stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, his face calm for the first time in many days, his voice quiet. This will be our new home, no cages, no walls, just sky and land and peace. Zira nodded slowly, her chest full of something warm and still growing. She had never seen real trees before, never touched grass, never smelled the rain that now fell gently across the window like a soft song. They landed near a small house made of light stone and strong wood. The door opened with a soft creak, and inside was everything simple and real. A table, two chairs, a bed with warm blankets, shelves with books and tools, and drawings of stars. Zira ran her fingers over one of the drawings. It looked like the sky from the night she met him, that strange sky that changed her life forever. Outside she saw a garden patch with roots already growing. Dallin told her they could grow their own food here, raise animals, teach others who had no place to go. She could go to school nearby, meet other children, learn new things, laugh and run without fear. Zira listened Quietly, her eyes shining but her voice small. Will they still think I am a mistake? Dallin turned and knelt beside her, his hand holding hers, his eyes strong and sure. Listen to me, Zira, you are not a mistake, you are the reason I kept going. You are the proof that love does not follow rules, it just finds a way, and no matter what anyone says, I am proud to be your father. Zira did not answer with words, she just leaned forward and hugged him, her arms tight around his neck, her face against his shoulder, her tears soft but full of meaning. He held her for a long time, until the sun moved lower in the sky and the stars began to wake. Again days passed and life began to bloom. Zira went to the small learning hall, made friends with a girl who had wings and a boy who had glowing skin. She told them little about her past, but enough to let them see her strength, her courage, her heart. They liked her not because of what she was, but because of who she was. At home she helped Dallin in the garden, learned how to fly small scout ships, learned how to repair broken radios, and cook simple meals. Sometimes she would sit under the big tree near the hill and draw pictures of the stars. Each one had a name. She gave them names her mother once whispered in the old recordings, names full of hope and light. One night Dallin brought out something wrapped in cloth. He said it had belonged to Mira, Zira's mother. It was a book, old and soft, filled with poems and songs and little notes in the corners. Mira had written about dreams, about love, about the child she hoped to hold one day. Zira read every word slowly, her fingers brushing the ink like it might disappear if she blinked. She asked him, do you think she would be proud of me? Dallin smiled a small, sad smile and said, I know she would be. She would hold you so close and never let you go. Zira looked up at the stars, the same stars she once cried under, the same stars that watched her grow and fall and rise again. She whispered into the sky, I miss you, Mama, but I found him and he found me, and I will live every day in a way that would make you smile. Later that night, Dallin sat beside her on the porch, the night breeze cool, the stars bright above. He handed her a small glowing stone, the pendant, recharged with sunlight, its glow soft and warm. Now it's yours again, he said, but this time you wear it not to be found, but to remember that you are never alone. She held the pendant close, her fingers wrapped around it, her voice gentle. Thank you for finding me even when you did not know where I was. Dallin looked at her with a quiet pride and said, thank you for letting me be your father. And as the wind carried their words into the night, and the stars blinked above them like distant eyes, watching two hearts find home at last, Zira closed her eyes and felt the world around her, not as something broken, but as something new, something beautiful, something hers.